Howdy, my name is Aaron. I make content on my life as a recently divorced single dad and creative entrepreneur. Now, I recently made a video talking about how you can make aesthetic videos in an ugly space, and you guys love that video. So I'm back with the sequel. And this time I want to talk about specifically how you can make aesthetic cooking videos. Now, as a dad, I spend a bunch of time cooking breakfast, lunch, dinner, making snacks, all of that, and I'm filming it from my YouTube channel. So I feel like I'm qualified to give you at least my process behind how I shoot aesthetic cooking videos. So in my last video, I gave you a general overview of like how you would film things, angles, lighting, gear. On this one, I'm going to go a little bit deeper and show you specifically how I actually use those things when I'm filming my own sequences. So assuming you saw the last video, you already know all the gear I own. So on this one, I'm actually going to be using it. So if you haven't seen that video, you should pop back, check the original video, then come back here and we will get into how to film more aesthetic cooking sequences. Now, when it comes to shooting aesthetic cooking sequences, you're definitely going to want to focus on your sound. In my previous video, I talked about using my Zoom H4n. However, I've actually done some tests since then with this particular setup, which is the Syco G2, and I found the audio to be pretty comparable. So honestly, this would probably be all you need. Basically, you don't want to use the onboard microphone that's on your camera. And when you capture live audio using your camera or this external recorder that you have, it's going to make your edits feel so much more immersive because it's going to feel like you're there. And I really love the idea of using this kind of microphone because you're able to capture the footage at the same time you're capturing the audio. Assuming, of course, that you don't capture the microphone in the shot, but doing so just simplifies the process of capturing audio and video. Now, when it comes to lighting a kitchen, it can be kind of tricky because everyone's kitchen space is different. Some of them have nice dimmable pendant lights. And me, I've got this thing, this very gross, large overhead light, which the first thing I'm going to always do is turn it off. Now, for what we don't have there, we make up for with this nice large window during the day. And then we're able to add this overhead light over the sink. And then we have this oven hood light. So with that, we've already got a nice little balance going on the right side of the room. But then over here, now if you saw the last video, you saw that I have two of these tube lights and I actually attach these to my baker's rack using the magnets. And then I add one and two. Now I have an evenly lit space on both sides of the room. Now I understand if my last video felt a little bit salesy, but this is why those additional lights matter. So you might not have this hood light or you might not have this light here above your kitchen sink. So without this, you're left with a dark area over the sink. But if you have these additional lights, you could simply take one of these and then place it up under here and get that same effect. So you have options if you have the gear. If you don't, it's understandable, but just know there's a reason why additional lights help. It's not about having that one big light up there. It's about having well-placed lights throughout your space. And you're going to need these lights because no matter where you're filming in your space, you're going to want to make sure you're getting proper exposure. When you're jumping back and forth between a cutting board and the stove and the sink and the refrigerator, you're always needing some kind of light. Whether or not you have lights inside of your kitchen already, having these additional lights and placing them strategically throughout the space is what's going to allow you to be able to get your camera to perform its best. Underexposed images are going to be very noisy and not aesthetically pleasing. Now, one of the most difficult things about shooting aesthetic videos in the kitchen is that my hands are constantly getting dirty. So the biggest recommendation I could make to you would be either use multiple cameras, use gloves, or get an assistant if you can find one, because that's probably the biggest challenge I have. You know, I'm cutting vegetables or I'm rolling dough or something like that. My hands are dirty. Now I need to turn off the camera, wash my hands, come back to shooting, come back to cooking. Like it's a lot. So if you can get a friend to come out when you're filming this stuff, it would make life a lot easier. A lot of times you're going to find yourself doing things that are time sensitive, and it'll be extremely inconvenient for you to stop cooking to go and turn off the camera, which is going to be you washing your hands and jumping back and forth. You want to limit that as much as possible when you're cooking because it's kind of frustrating. If you have two cameras or you have a dedicated camera plus your phone, that's going to allow you to get two angles at the same time, which is going to take up much less time. But I understand if you don't, just make do with what you have. Now, in my last video, I talked about the different lenses that I use, but here I want to talk about specifically how I use them in shooting aesthetic cooking sequences. The lens that I'm using here is the TTArtisan 10mm 2.0. very wide angle lens, and it's great because I'm able to capture this entire kitchen space. Right now I'm this far away from the lens, but I'm able to show you the baker's rack and the refrigerator as well as some of the wall. And ultra wide is really nice when you want to show all the ingredients that you're putting into a specific item that you're cooking, as well as the entire cooktop, or just making this smaller space seem a lot bigger. With a tighter lens, there's no way you'd be able to get all this detail into a single shot. Now jumping over to the Viltrox 23mm 1.4, this lens is really great for being able to get a tighter shot, but still wide enough to be able to capture like two different things all in the same shot. So if I'm cooking something in the foreground, but I want to show you what's going on in the background, this is great for that. I don't have to worry about being super far away, and I'm still able to capture two different things. And I'm able to take this lens, get closer to a subject without having any distortion. And if you're doing aesthetic cooking videos specifically, you want your food to look appealing. It's not going to look that flattering if it's distorted because of the wide angle. Now I have 5 lenses, but I'm only going to talk about 3. And the third lens is actually the Meike 55mm 1.4. Now again, it's not about specifically these lenses that you need to get. It's just about the focal lengths that I'm using. I have one ultra wide, then I have one that's a little bit more of a medium, which is the 23. And then on the 55, this is what I'm using to get those close-up shots so I can really show the detail of what I'm cooking. While this lens is very sharp and allows me to really get detail, it's simply too long. In fact, the camera is right now physically outside of the kitchen space. That's how far away I have to get in order to fit my whole body in. However, if I'm cooking and I just want to focus on whatever it is that's on the stove, I probably wouldn't be able to have the camera right there, but I put a little distance between it, and then I use the 55mm, and I'm able to get a very detailed shot of what's cooking. And those are definitely the most appealing shots that I'm going to be able to get while I'm cooking. Those shots are going to look fantastic. It's just a little bit more of a cumbersome lens to use, but it's honestly worth it. So again, it doesn't have to be this lens specifically. You just want to be anywhere over 50. You know, I'd probably say the longer the better. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to work with because it's going to have to be further away. Now I am shooting on a crop sensor camera, which means my field of view is not as wide as a full frame, but I don't want to get lost in the detail. If you get to the point where you're deciding between a crop sensor and a full frame, then you're way beyond the scope of what this video really needs to be. So don't worry about it. Just get a camera, get a lens, start focusing on your food. Once you have some information, come back to this video and it'll all make sense. Now, if we're talking about how to achieve more aesthetic cooking videos, you're definitely going to want to use the top-down shot. Now, this can be achieved a number of different ways, but in this case, we're actually using a C-stand armed out above the stove, and that's allowing me to shoot over top and get this particular angle. Now, you don't really need to use it to shoot people. It's great for showing all the tools you're using or every ingredient that's inside of a recipe, or simply just you combining different ingredients in order to create whatever you're making. I would definitely say this is a technique you're probably going to want to lean on. So if you're trying to decide where to allocate your budget and something has to go, I would not skimp on the C-stand. You know, maybe let 1 light go or 2 lights go as long as you have enough to keep your images properly exposed. And definitely invest in a C-stand because it's going to be the shot that's going to make so many different things easy. This shot, as well as the more aesthetic shots where you're really showing details, are going to be the ones that are really going to matter to them. The 23mm is enough to get everything else. You can get details as well as still be able to get wide enough shots to be able to get, you know, multiple different things inside of a single shot without having to be too far away from whatever it is you're filming. Now, the other shot was actually on the 16mm, which I'm not really even talking about in this video. This one is a more traditional top down, and this is shot on the 10mm 2.0. And I'm showing this to you so you see the difference. On the 16mm, I actually could not fit myself underneath the lens and still see my entire body. Right now, I'm underneath the lens and I'm still this far away, and I'm able to capture myself as well as the entire kitchen. It's a huge difference, especially when you're talking about cooking. This lens may actually be too wide, but you could definitely make it work if you had to. Now, when you're shooting your footage, what are you actually focusing on? Personally, I'm always going to focus on the action. Cutting, pouring, rolling, any actions that are a part of the process you're performing are what you want to capture with your footage. You don't want to just get a bunch of static shots of things sitting on the counter. You want to see them moving. But with that said, a good variety of these different types of shots are going to be what makes your aesthetic cooking sequence pop. One of the other key components of being able to shoot aesthetic videos is going to be your tripod. Now, unfortunately, it's another expense, and I personally did not want to buy one, but what I often ran into when I was shooting cooking sequences specifically is that I could only get the camera on this side of the action. Now, if you have a kitchen with an island where your cooktop and everything is right in the middle, then you have a lot more options because you can get on either side of, you know, the action, whatever you're cooking, whatever you're cutting. However, I don't. I had to use this smaller tripod, which is the newer TP09, and that allows me to finally get to this side of my cook surface. Now, this perspective completely opens up your options because now you're not limited as to where you can place the camera. Now you have options up top on this side or the other side of your cooking surface. And this is going to help bring variety to your aesthetic cooking sequences. Now, there are definitely other tripods out there that offer this. So what you're looking for is something that gets pretty low, and then the legs can go completely flat, which is going to give you the ability to go up or low, which is going to give you additional height options if you're just on the countertop, in addition to having your tripod that's over here where you can do whatever else you want to do. Aesthetic cooking videos are all about showing your process and making your food look as appetizing as possible. Shooting aesthetic cooking sequences specifically comes with its own set of unique challenges because it's not just about capturing the footage. It's also about getting the meal done. But if you go into the process with an actual vision, this video should help you to come up with some kind of plan in order to make sure you're capturing everything and making it look delicious. So I'm hoping the advice I provided in this video gave you additional context behind my thought process behind creating aesthetic cooking sequences. And if it didn't, feel free to put any questions you have down in the comment section below.